Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're jumping straight into one of the absolute most profound and emotionally charged narratives in all of ancient history. We're going to be looking strictly at the text of Ruth, zeroing in on chapter 1. This isn't just some dry historical recount. It's an incredibly human story. We're talking staggering loss, absolutely impossible choices, and a loyalty so fierce it honestly defies all logic. I'm so thrilled to guide you through this so we can really break down the text and understand the true gravity of these events together.
Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to hold a specific question in your mind as we go through today's explainer. What does it actually take to abandon everything you know? Think about that. Your family, your homeland, your religion, your entirely predictable future. All of it. Just for the sake of love. We throw the word loyalty around pretty lightly these days, but as we're about to see, real, true loyalty often comes at an unbearable cost. Let's look at how this story actually begins.
Moving into section 1, famine and exile. Every great narrative has that one inciting incident, right? A catalyst that just completely upends the characters' lives. And for our story, the catalyst is dire. We start with a family living in Bethlehem. Now, the irony here is incredibly thick, because the name Bethlehem literally translates to house of bread, but the house of bread is completely empty. Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 and 2 states, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there." So this wasn't just a brief shortage. This was a massive, life-threatening famine that forced Elimelech and Naomi to uproot their whole family and flee as refugees to the foreign land of Moab, literally just to survive. But unfortunately, survival in Moab quickly turns to absolute tragedy. In Ruth chapter 1, verses 3 through 5, it outlines a completely devastating 10-year timeline. First, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, dies. That leaves her alone with her 2 sons. Those sons then marry Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth. Now, they live there for about a decade, maybe finding some kind of normal life. But then the unimaginable happens. Mahlon and Chilion both die. I mean, just think about that. Over the span of 10 years, Naomi's entire world collapses. She's lost her husband, and she's lost both of her children. That brings us to section 2, the plight of the widow. Now, what's really interesting about this slide, and I want to pause our chronological narrative right here for just a second, is that to truly grasp the stakes of this text, we absolutely must understand the grim realities of the ancient world these women were living in. This wasn't just an emotional tragedy for Naomi, it was a socio-economic disaster. In ancient Near Eastern culture, a woman's protection, her identity, and her economic survival were entirely tied to the men in her life. First her father, then her husband, and finally her sons. Without a husband or sons, a widow lost her primary economic income. She had virtually 0 property rights, and she faced extreme societal vulnerability. There were no social safety nets back then. So Naomi is now an aging foreigner in a strange land, completely and utterly stripped of any societal protection. To anchor this profound, vulnerable despair, Ruth chapter 1, verse 5 states, "And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them, and the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband." That single phrase, "the woman was left," wow, it is just profoundly heavy. It perfectly captures the rock bottom Naomi is experiencing. It's from this place of absolute desperation that she hears the famine in Judah has finally ended. So, according to verses 6 and 7, she decides she has no choice but to begin the long, incredibly dangerous journey back home. So, here we are at section 3, the crossroads of Moab. This brings us to a crossroads, both literally and emotionally. Naomi starts her journey back to Judah, and her 2 daughters-in-law, Orpah and Ruth, actually set out with her. But as they're walking this dusty road, Naomi stops. She looks at these 2 young women and realizes, wait, I'm leading them away from their homeland, into a place where they'll be the foreigners, just like she was in Moab. Ruth chapter 1, verses 8 and 9 states, "And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you, as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. You guys, this is an act of pure, selfless love from Naomi. She's literally pleading with them to go back to where they actually have a chance at finding rest, finding security, and finding new husbands. Initially, both women insist on sticking with her. But Naomi comes back with a highly logical, if deeply bitter argument to push them away. In Ruth chapter 1, verses 11 through 13, it says, "And Naomi said, 'Turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? Turn again, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me.'" She's essentially telling them flat out, "Look, I have absolutely zero future to offer you." Faced with this completely bleak, logical reality, a choice has to be made. Ruth chapter 1, verse 14 states, "And they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her." And this brilliantly illustrates the drastically contrasting paths of these two women. Orpah makes the practical, totally understandable decision. She kisses Naomi goodbye and heads back to safety and familiarity. But Ruth? The text explicitly says she clave unto her. She clung to Naomi with an unprecedented hesitation to leave her side. Let's move to section 4, Ruth's unbreakable devotion. All right, we've reached the emotional climax of our explainer. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 15, it says that Naomi tells Ruth, "Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law." Naomi is giving her one final out, one last chance to do the sensible thing. But Ruth's response? It's a life-altering choice that has literally echoed through the centuries. Ruth chapter 1, verse 16 states, "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God." Just take a second to really process the immense weight of those words. In Ruth chapter 1, verses 16 and 17, it says, "Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me." So the crucial point here is this. Ruth is permanently abandoning her homeland. She's leaving behind her native gods. She's giving up her family and any guarantee whatsoever of safety or a new husband. And it's all out of pure, unadulterated love and loyalty to her grieving mother-in-law. It's a complete total surrender of her own security. That is staggering. Which leads us to section 5, a bitter return home. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 18, it states that when Naomi saw Ruth was steadfastly minded to go with her, she just stopped arguing. The debate was officially over. And so these two incredibly vulnerable women make the extremely arduous trek back to the land of Judah together. They finally step foot into Bethlehem. But, as you might guess, it is not a joyous homecoming. Ruth chapter 1, verse 19 states, "So they two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass, when they were come to Bethlehem, that all the city was moved about them. And they said, Is this Naomi?" The townspeople are visibly shocked. They're looking at the tragic transformation of a woman who left 10 years prior with a husband and sons, and is returning now with absolutely nothing but a foreign daughter-in-law. Naomi's response to them is just heartbreaking. In Ruth chapter 1, verse 20, it says, "And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty have dealt very bitterly with me." The name Naomi literally means pleasant, but she entirely rejects her birth name right here. She demands to be called Mara, which translates to bitter. She's publicly declaring to the whole town that she believes God has turned completely against her. Ruth chapter 1, verse 21 states, "I went out full, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord hath testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me?" Let's pause and see how this builds a picture of absolute, utter desolation. She says she left full, full of family, full of hope, even despite the famine. And she's been brought back completely empty. The pain is just so deeply etched into her reality that it's clouding her vision entirely. But the narrator of the text gives us, the reader, a little glimmer of light that Naomi just can't see quite yet. Ruth chapter 1, verse 22 states, "So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest." The chronological narrative of chapter 1 concludes right here. The terrible famine that chased Naomi away, it's completely over. The earth is finally yielding food again. It's the beginning of the harvest season, which brings this really subtle yet incredibly powerful promise of provision and new life. Which leaves us with this final thought-provoking question for today's explainer. Naomi proclaimed she had been brought back utterly empty. But was she really? While Naomi saw only her bitter affliction, could she see the profound hope of Ruth standing right beside her? Ruth, whose unbreakable loyalty and love had carried them both all the way to this golden field of barley. I really encourage you to ponder how this extraordinary devotion from a total foreigner might just be the very thing that changes the course of history for them both. Thank you so much for learning with me today. Keep your curiosity alive and keep seeking to understand the incredible stories that shape our world.